In February 1979, the fishing vessel Sarah Joe set sail from Maui, Hawaii, captained by 28-year-old Peter Hanchett. On board were 4 crewmen: John Minge, Scott Moorman, Patrick Wosner, and George Smith. Their destination was the remote Pailolo Channel, known for abundant catches and rough waters. It was meant to be a routine voyage, but it would become one of the Pacific's greatest unsolved mysteries. On the evening of February 11th, the Coast Guard received a routine radio check from Captain Hanchett. He reported clear skies and good weather, stating everything was operating normally. It was the final time anyone heard from the vessel or its crew. When the Sarah Joe failed to return to port as scheduled, alarm bells began to ring across the Hawaiian Islands. Within hours, a massive search and rescue operation was launched. The U.S. Coast Guard deployed cutters, aircraft, and rescue swimmers. Scouring thousands of square miles of ocean between Maui, Molokai, and Oahu, commercial vessels and local fishermen joined the effort, combing every wave and current. But day after day, there was no sign of the boat or the 5 men aboard. After days of intensive searching, the Coast Guard admitted defeat. There was no debris field, no oil slick, no life rafts, and no bodies. In the vast blue expanse of the Pacific, it was as if the Sarah Joe had simply ceased to exist. Theories began to circulate. Had she sunk instantly in a rogue wave? Or had something far stranger occurred in the deep waters between the islands? Investigators examined weather reports closely. While conditions were generally calm, the channel is notorious for sudden, violent squalls and unpredictable swells. Some believe the boat had been overwhelmed by a rogue wave or capsized instantly, leaving no time for distress signals. Yet other vessels in the area reported no such extreme conditions, leaving this explanation uncertain. Rumors quickly spread that the disappearance was an elaborate fraud. The Sarah Joe was insured for a significant sum, and some speculated the crew had scuttled the ship and escaped to start new lives elsewhere. However, those who knew the men described them as hardworking and honest, with no financial troubles or motives to fake their own deaths or abandon their families and homes. In the late 1970s, reports of piracy and smuggling in the Pacific were on the rise. Some suggested the crew had stumbled upon an illegal operation or been targeted by criminals. The theory proposed the men were killed and the boat sunk to destroy evidence. Yet there was no evidence of criminal activity in the area, and no bodies or trace of foul play ever surfaced to support this claim. The case drew comparisons to the infamous Bermuda Triangle. The waters surrounding Hawaii, often called the Pacific Triangle, have long been associated with strange disappearances, compass anomalies, and unexplained phenomena. Enthusiasts suggested the crew had fallen victim to unknown magnetic forces, dimensional shifts, or underwater geological events that could sink ships without a trace. As months turned to years, the families of the missing men were left in agonizing limbo. Without bodies or proof of death, they struggled to obtain legal closure, insurance benefits, or the simple peace of mind that comes with knowing what happened. Memorial services were held, but they felt incomplete gatherings for men who might still be alive somewhere across the horizon. The disappearance of the Sarah Joe became part of Hawaiian maritime lore. Fishermen spoke of the boat as a ghost ship, saying that on quiet nights you could hear voices or see lights bobbing on the water where the vessel vanished. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in familiar waters, the ocean holds secrets deeper than any man can fathom. Nearly a decade later, in September 1988, a fisherman named Dwayne Stone was trolling for tuna near Taongi Atoll, over 2,000 miles southwest of Hawaii. He spotted a strange object bobbing in the water. Pulling it aboard, he realized it was a wooden crate, sealed tightly and encrusted with barnacles and marine growth. What was inside would shock the world. When the crate was pried open, investigators found the remains of a human body, along with clothing, personal effects, and identification papers. The documents confirmed the identity: Scott Moorman, one of the missing crew members of the Sarah Joe. It was the first and only physical evidence found in 9 years. Yet it raised far more questions than it answered. Taongi Atoll lies in the Marshall Islands, thousands of miles from where the boat disappeared. Oceanographers studied currents extensively, concluding that natural drift could not have carried a heavy wooden crate that far in that time frame. The path defied all known laws of ocean movement, suggesting that the crate had been moved or transported by human hands at some point. Forensic examination revealed Moorman's remains were remarkably well preserved, wrapped in tarpaulin and secured inside the sturdy wooden box. It appeared he had been placed there intentionally, not swept away by accident. There were no obvious signs of trauma. leaving investigators to wonder if he had died at sea or met a violent end before being placed in his strange coffin. One hypothesis suggests that after the vessel sank, the surviving crew or passing mariners placed Moorman's body in the crate as a makeshift coffin, intending to give him a proper burial. However, this theory fails to explain why the crate was left adrift, why it traveled such an impossible distance, and what happened to the other 4 men who were never found. Detectives began to consider the possibility of murder. If the crew had been killed, perhaps during a dispute or by external attackers, the body could have been placed in the crate to hide the evidence and delay discovery. The fact that only one body was found, and in such an unusual location, supported the idea that someone had gone to great lengths to conceal the truth. The discovery of Moorman's remains offered no clues about the fate of Captain Hanshet, John Minge, Patrick Wosner, or George Smith. Their bodies were never recovered, and no trace of their belongings was ever found. It remains unknown if they died alongside Moorman, were lost at sea, or perhaps even survived and chose to vanish forever from their old lives. Investigators attempted to trace the origin of the wooden box. It was determined to be similar to crates used for shipping goods or storing supplies, but no records linked it to the Sarah Joe or its crew. Who built it? Who sealed it? Who placed Scott Moorman inside? These questions remain unanswered, making the crate itself one of the most baffling elements of the entire case. Oceanographic experts ran computer simulations to see if the crate could have drifted naturally. Every model concluded it was impossible. The prevailing currents would have carried debris northward or toward the American mainland, not thousands of miles southwest toward the remote Marshall Islands. The evidence strongly indicated human intervention in its journey. Investigators noted that Taongi Atoll sits along historical smuggling and trade routes. It is a remote, uninhabited location, perfect for meeting points or hiding evidence. This led to the theory that the Sarah Joe crew was involved in or interrupted a smuggling operation, and Moorman's body was moved along these routes to ensure it would never be found or linked to the crime. A persistent theory suggests that the crew did not die at all. Some believe they faked their disappearance, changed their identities, and started new lives elsewhere, perhaps using the boat as part of a smuggling ring or simply tired of their old existences. Moorman's death could have occurred later, and his body disposed of in the ocean far from Hawaii to avoid detection. For Scott Moorman's family, the discovery brought both closure and renewed pain. They finally had their loved one back, but the circumstances of his death and the location of his remains made it impossible to rest easy. The families of the other men, however, were left with the same empty questions they had lived with for years. Their grief extended indefinitely. Despite the new evidence, law enforcement officials eventually declared the case inactive. There were no suspects, no witnesses, and no concrete proof of how the men died or where they went. The trail had gone cold, stretching across thousands of miles of open ocean and through decades of silence. The truth seemed destined to remain submerged beneath the waves. The story of Scott Moorman's remains found in a wooden box thousands of miles away became a legend in maritime circles. It defied logic and reason, becoming a staple of true crime and mystery discussions. How does a body travel across an ocean in a sealed box? It remains one of the most perplexing riddles in the history of ocean disappearances. Experts note that this case is unique. Usually when a boat sinks, debris spreads widely across the water. Here, nothing was found for nearly a decade, and then only a single body in a custom container. This pattern does not align with natural disasters or accidents. It points toward intent. Someone did something, and someone tried very hard to hide what happened. Native Hawaiian beliefs hold that the ocean is a living entity, a force that can take and return what it wills. Some view the discovery of Moorman's remains not as evidence of crime or accident, but as the sea choosing to return one of its own while keeping the others. This spiritual view offers comfort to some, even as it leaves the logical questions completely unanswered. Today, armchair detectives and researchers continue to debate the case. Some suggest modern technologies like satellite tracking might have solved it had they existed in 1979. Others believe the answer lies in international criminal networks operating in the Pacific. Every new discovery in oceanography or forensic science brings fresh eyes to this decades-old puzzle. The Sarah Joe mystery remains officially unsolved. The files sit in police archives full of statements, reports, and theories, but no final conclusion. It stands as a stark reminder of how vast and unforgiving the ocean can be, and how easily human beings and their secrets can vanish into the deep blue, leaving only fragments behind to tell their story. Over the years, memorials have been erected to honor the crew of the Sarah Joe. Plaques and dedications serve as reminders that these were real men with lives, families, and dreams. Their story is taught in maritime safety courses, used as a lesson in preparedness, but also as a reminder that there are places where human knowledge and control simply do not reach. To this day, the disappearance of the Sarajevo and its crew remains one of the most confounding mysteries in history. Whether it was a tragic accident, a criminal act, or something beyond our understanding, the truth rests somewhere between the depths of the Pacific and the silence of the past. The ocean has returned one soul, but it still holds the rest and the answers.